finishing a game and why you should stick with what you know, coming up. Hey guys, it's Travis Vroman. Today I want to talk about finishing your game and why it's important to stick with what you know to do that. So, learning new things is always a good idea as a game developer. You should always be trying to upskill and improve your, in other words, improve your skills or learn new things to become a better developer, become a more rounded developer, or sometimes they call it full stack developer. It's always a good idea to increase your knowledge. But by the same token, you have to be careful with that when it comes to your actual game projects. So when you set out to make a game, especially if it's your first game, you really need to stick with what you already know. So if you've had a little bit of programming experience in C#, for example, you might want to use something like Unity that uses C# for its scripting language. Whereas if you're really familiar with C++, then maybe you'll want to use Unreal because that's what that uses. Furthermore, if you're familiar with a specific game engine, use that game engine to make your game, especially your first game. And the reason for that is because when you're trying to develop your game, your first game, you don't want to get bogged down by having to learn all this stuff in order to just get something working. You really want to be able to just sort of sit down and actually work on the game. And if you're trying to learn a new technology or a new game engine, that's a lot of time that you're not actually developing the game, but you're just learning the engine. Now, obviously, learning engines and stuff needs to happen, but it shouldn't be happening in the context of trying to make a game. You should learn at least the basics of that game engine first and make a couple of small tests on the side or whatever to make sure that you have an understanding of the game, follow some tutorials, things like that. But when you're actually setting out to create your game, that is not the time to learn technology. That is not the time to learn new tools. The time to learn those things is before that. If you're at the point where you're familiar with a specific tool set, then utilize that tool set that you're familiar with. Don't try and learn something new to develop that game. Maybe when you're done with that game, if you want to learn another game engine, then go off and learn that. Watch some tutorials, follow some posts, whatever, online in order to learn that tool set. Trying to upskill in the middle of a game development cycle can be pretty demotivating, to be completely honest. And it's not something that you should do when you're trying to actually finish a game. If you're trying to actually finish a game, you should be focusing on making the game and not learning new tools. And if you're not familiar with any tools, then maybe you shouldn't be trying to make a game yet. You should get familiar with those tools first. But if we're talking about finishing a game, then the assumption is made that you understand at least a set of tools, whether it's GameMaker, whether it's Construct, whether it's Torque, Unreal, Unity, doesn't matter. You're familiar on some level with how some of those tools work. So one thing I want to make clear is I am not saying don't upskill. I'm not saying don't learn new things. I'm certainly not saying don't try to improve your knowledge or gain any knowledge on things that you aren't aware of how to do. But don't do that. All I'm saying is don't do that in the middle of trying to develop a game. Develop the game, ship the game after you're finished with it, and move on. At that point, learn something new. So I really don't have anything else to add to that. Please like this video and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow.